Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately, anyone can play accurately, but I play with a wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. By the way, Lane, I see from your books that on Thursday night when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles at a pint.
Why is it, Lane, that at a bachelor's establishment the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, Lane! Is merit so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I have only been married once. And that was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family.
No, sir. It's not a very interesting subject. I hardly think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders aren't there to set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem, as a class, to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
Ernest, my dear fellow, what brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in the town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are these people you amuse?
Neighbours, neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire.
Perfectly horrid. Let me speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your country, is it not?
Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why the cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance when one's so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, it is all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you had come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic about proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. And then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll make certain to try and forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algy. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Oh, there's no use speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please do not touch the cucumber sandwiches. They are ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
You've been eating them all the time.
Well, that is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. You may have the bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
Very good, bread and butter it is too.
My dear fellow, you need not eat it as if you were going to eat it all. You behave as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I do not think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
That is nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors that one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin, and I can hardly be expected to allow you to marry her until you clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean by Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room when last he dined here.
Yes, sir.
So you have had my cigarette case this whole time? Wish to goodness you would let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hot up.
There was no sense in offering a large reward now that the thing has been found.
I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no difference, for now that I read the inscription inside, I find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it is mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right whatsoever to read what is written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to do, to read a private cigarette case.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a gift from someone of the name of Cecily, and you said you don't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know the truth, Cecily's my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady, too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algy.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall. Some aunts are not tall. Surely that is a matter that an aunt may be able to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt ought to be like your aunt. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, just give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her dear uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It is Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
But you have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It is perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Ernest. It's on your cards. Here is one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany West. I'll keep this as proof your name is Ernest if ever you attempt to deny to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
My name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not quite account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come, old boy, you had much better have the thing out at once.
Algy, you speak exactly like a dentist. It is a very vulgar thing to do to speak like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
That is exactly what dentists always do. Now, go on. I may mention that I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I am quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to reveal why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here, now produce your explanation and pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it is perfectly ordinary. The old Mr. Thomas Cardew adopted me when I was a boy and made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Miss Cardew, who addresses me as her uncle from motives of respect that you could not possibly understand, lives at my estate in the country with her admirable governess, Miss Prison.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
Oh, that is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I can tell you quite candidly that it is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have Bunburyed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now, go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
Algy, I don't know whether you will be able to understand my motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the role of guardian, one has to adopt a high moral tone in all subjects. It is one's duty to do so. And, as a high moral tone can hardly be said to be very conducive to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always said, I have a brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful of scrapes. That is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. You are a Bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Ernest, in order that you may be able to come up into town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go down into the country as often as I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it weren't for Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, for I have really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I have not asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. It is very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You would much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I am treated as a member of the family, and set down with either no woman at all, or two. In the third place, I know well with whom my Aunt Augusta shall place me tonight. She shall place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. That is not very pleasant. Indeed, it is not even decent, and that sort of behavior is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London these days who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It is simply airing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk with you all about Bunbury. I want to tell you the rules.
But I'm not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I may kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too interested in him. It is rather a bore. And so I shall get rid of Ernest. And I strongly advise you to do the same with your invalid friend with the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me to be extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
That is nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolen, she's the only girl I ever saw in my life that I would marry, I will certainly not want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will! You don't seem to understand that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
For heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It is perfectly easy to be cynical.
It isn't perfectly easy to be anything these days. There's such a lot of beastly competition thereabout. Ah. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I can get her out of the way for 10 minutes in order that you might have an opportunity to propose to Gwendolen, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It is so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I do hope you're behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
Well, that's hardly the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely ever go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Aren't I, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. It would leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions. I'm sorry we're a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I've never seen a woman so altered. She looked quite 20 years younger. And now, I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Gwendolen, won't you sit over here? Thanks, Mamma. I'm perfectly comfortable where I am.
Good heavens, Lane! Why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially for Aunt Augusta.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers, not even for ready money.
Oh, it really makes no matter, Algernon. I had crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed colour. From what cause, I of course cannot say. Thank you. Not quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I am setting you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It's lovely to watch them.
I am afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you this evening.
I should hope not. It would put my table completely out. Your poor uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he's accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me, but the fact is, I have just received a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is feeling ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he would like to live or die. This silly-shallying with the matter is absurd, nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy for invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice as far as any improvement in his ailments goes. I would be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough to not have a relapse on Saturday. Or I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one hopes for something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has said almost everything they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. And I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. Now, if you'll follow me into the next room for a moment, I'll run over the program I've drawn out.
It's very kind. Thank you, Algernon. Gwendolen, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I would like to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I have often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I ever met since I met you.
Yes, I am quite well aware of the fact. And I often wish that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew that I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolen.
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, of course it is, but supposing it was something else. You don't mean to say you couldn't love me that.
Ah, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation, and like most metaphysical speculations, rarely has any reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know it.
Well, personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care for the name of Ernest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibration.
Well, really, Gwendolen, I must say, I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, is a charming name.
Jack? No, there is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I've known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack's a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She was probably never allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolen, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There's no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely, you know that I love you, and you have led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you are not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you. But you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing at all has been said about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn?
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Oh, of course I will, darling. How long you have been about it? I'm afraid you have had very little experience on how to propose.
My own one, I have never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. There's no place for you here. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise. Pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. It's hardly a matter that she should be able to decide for herself. And now, I have some questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn!
Yes, Mamma.
You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men. However, I'm quite ready to enter your name should your answers prove to be what a truly affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Yes, I must admit I spoke, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A perfectly wonderful age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to be married should either know everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would probably lead to uprisings in the lower class and acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory.
I own a country house with some land attached to it, of course, about 1,500 acres, but that is not my main source of income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only ones who make anything out of it.
A country house. How many bedrooms? Oh, well, that matter can be cleared up at a later date. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the heir to Lady Bloxham. I can get it back whenever I like, of course, given 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham, I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in her years.
Nowadays, that is no indication of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. But I'm sure that can soon be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the sound?
Both, I assume. And now on to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
Both. To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born into what the regimental papers call the purport of commerce, or did he rise into the ranks of aristocracy?
I'm afraid I really don't know, Lady Bracknell. You see, I had said that I had lost both my parents. However, it would be nearer the truth to say that my parents had lost me. I don't really know who I am by birth. I was, well, I was found.
Found?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very kindly and charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he had a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
And where did this charitable gentleman with a ticket to a seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
Handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I was in a handbag. A black leather, somewhat large handbag with a handle to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
And where did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew happen across this perfectly ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station.
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I must confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display an utmost contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that remind one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might be used to conceal a social indiscretion. Has probably been used for that purpose before now, but it can hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a respectable position in good society.
May I ask then what you would advise me to do? I need hardly to say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness. I
would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to make a definite effort to find some relations and to produce at any rate one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I hardly see how I can do that. I can produce the handbag at any minute. It is in my dressing room at home. I certainly think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would allow our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. Goodness sakes, don't play that ghastly tune, Algie. How idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you? I know. It is a way she has. She is always refusing people. I think it most ill-natured of her.
Gwendolyn is right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. I never met such a gorgon. I don't actually know what a gorgon is, but I'm quite sure she is one. And she is a monster without being a myth, which is rather unfair. I beg your pardon. I suppose I shouldn't speak about your relations like that in front of you, Algie.
My dear fellow, I love hearing my relations abused. It is the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't got the smallest knowledge of how to live, nor the remotest instinct about when to die.
That's nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I'm not going to argue about the matter. You always want to argue about things.
Well, that is exactly what things were originally made for.
Good heavens, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. You don't think there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That's his.
Is that clever?
It's perfectly phrased and quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be. By the way, have you told Gwendolyn the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
Oh, the truth is not the sort of thing one blurts out to a nice, sweet, refined girl. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty and to someone else if she is plain.
That is nonsense.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
Oh, I shall have got rid of him by the end of the week. Or say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You'd much better say a severe chill.
You are quite sure severe chill is not hereditary or anything of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Very well, then. My poor brother Ernest is carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother. Won't she feel his loss a good deal?
Oh, don't worry about that. Cecily is not a silly, romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She's got a capital appetite, goes for long walks, pays no attention whatsoever to her lessons.
I should rather like to see Cecily.
I will make quite sure you never do. She's excessively pretty and only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Oh, that is not the sort of thing one just tells to someone. Cecily and Gwendolyn are perfectly certain to be great friends. I can guarantee that half an hour after they have met, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only do that when they have called each other a lot of other things first. Now, if we want to dine tonight at Willis's, we really must go and change. Do you know it's nearly 7?
It is always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
I really don't think that I can allow this at all.
Algy, you adopt a strictly immoral attitude toward life. You're not old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what the children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Any influence I ever had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing that she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Bolton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I've turned round already.
And you may ring the bell.
You will let me see into your carriage, my own darling.
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes. A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I shall probably not be back till Monday.
Yes, sir.
You may pack my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, all the Bunbury suits, and my curling tongs.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
Now there's a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I ever cared for in my life. What on earth are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm just a little anxious about poor Bunbury, that's all.
If you don't take care, that Bunbury of yours will get you into a serious scrape one of these days.
No, I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
That is nonsense. You never speak anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Cecily, surely such a utilitarian occupation as gardening is rather Moulton's duty than yours, especially at a moment when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German as he's leaving for town.
Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes I think he is so serious that he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when the three of us are together.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence on him. I'm sure you would, Miss Prism. You know German and geography and things of that nature influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I am much more that I would desire to reclaim him. I am not in favor of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that haven't happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory was responsible for nearly all of the 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I do not like books that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily, and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so. But it seems rather unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child, these speculations are profitless.
But I see there's Dr. Chasuble coming up from the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning?
Miss Prism, I trust you are well.
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
Oh, I know that, Miss Prism. But I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you're not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Or if I were fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I'd hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet.
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes. He usually likes to spend his Sundays in London. He's not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts an unfortunate young man his brother seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion, nearly drawn from the pagan authors. As just you both, no doubt, in even song.
I think, dear Doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache after all. I hope might do us good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Oh, Cecily, your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic sides.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German.
Hey, Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He has brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany West. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing is in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned to him that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was very anxious to speak to you in private for a moment.
Asked Mr. Worthing to come out here. And I suppose you'd better speak to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I have never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he will look just like everyone else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I am sure.
You are under some mistake. Indeed, I am not little. In fact, I believe I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, but you mustn't think that I'm wicked at all, Cousin Cecily. I am not really wicked.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and really being good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
No. Oh, of course, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention the subject, I have been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that. Though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you're here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
That is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go up by the first train on Monday. I have a business appointment that I am anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But still, I think you had better wait until Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to talk to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He has gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you will require neckties. Uncle is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
The accounts I've received of the next world in Australia are not particularly encouraging, Cousin Cecily. This world is good enough for me.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission if you don't mind, Cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
Thank you. I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
Which is because I am hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. Oh, might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first. A pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cecily.
Do you not think it could be quite right for you to talk to me like that? Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They're a snare that every sensible man should like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are much too alone, Dr. Plausible. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand, a womanthrope never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often I've been told, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can be depended upon. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing?
Mr. Worthing?
This is indeed a surprise. We did not expect you till Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Charles, well, I hope you are well.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasures.
Dead.
Your brother, Ernest, dead.
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust you will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you are always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad, in Paris, in fact. I received a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seemed.
As man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drafts. Will the interment take place here?
No, we seem to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? I fear that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the Mina and Mana and the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion. Joyful, or as in the present case, distressing. I've preached at harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, on days of humiliation, and festal days. The last time I delivered it was at a cathedral as a charity sermon on behalf of Society of the Prevention of Discontent among the upper orders. The bishop who was present was much struck by some of the analogies I drew.
Yes, that reminds me, Dr. Chasuble. I believe you mentioned christenings. I suppose you know how to christen all right. I mean, you are continually christening.
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I have often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant in whom you are interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Yes, but
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
it is not any child, dear doctor. I'm very fond of children. No, I myself would like to be christened this afternoon if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you've been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
But you have any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have. Of course, I don't know if the thing would bother you in any way, or if you think I'm a little too old now.
Not at all. The sprinkling and indeed the immersions of adults is perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion!
You need have no apprehensions, Mr. Worthing. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed I think advisable. Our weather is so changeable. At what hour would you wish the ceremony performed?
Oh, I might trot round about 5 if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that time. A case of twins that occurred recently in an outlying cottage of your own estate. Poor Jenkins, the carter, a most hard-working man.
I don't think it would be much fun to be christened along with other babies. It would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably, admirably. And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I must not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow. I merely beg you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seems to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack, I'm so glad to see you back. But what horrid clothes you have got on. Do go and change them.
Cecily!
My child, my child.
What is the matter, Uncle Jack? Do look happy. You look as if you had a toothache, and I have got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother?
Who?
Your brother Ernest. He arrived just half an hour ago.
What nonsense. I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are very joyful times.
After we have all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My brother is in the dining room. I don't know what any of it means. I think it is perfectly absurd. Oh, good heavens.
Brother John, I have come all the way down from town to tell you that I am very sorry for the life I have lived in the past. And that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think he's coming down here perfectly disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in all of us. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury. And surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
He's been telling you about Bunbury, has he?
He told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury in his terrible state of health.
Bunbury! Well, he will not be talking to you about Bunbury or about anything else. It is enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit the faults were entirely on my side, but I must say, I think my brother John's coldness to me peculiarly painful. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, particularly considering this is the first time that I have come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake Ernest's hand, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might lead the 2 brothers together.
Cecily, he will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little act of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, dear child.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
How do You young scoundrel, you have got to get out of here as soon as possible. I do not allow any Bunburyans here.
I have unpacked Mr. Ernest's luggage and placed it in the room next to yours, sir. I suppose that is all right.
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I have unpacked it and placed it in the room next to yours, sir.
Luggage.
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, 2 dressing cases, a hat box, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can only stay for a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Ernest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful lie you are, Jack. I've not been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasure in the slightest
I
degree.
can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You are not to speak of Miss Cardwell like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. Why on earth don't you go up and change them? You look perfectly ridiculous in them. It is very childish to be in deep mourning for a man who's actually staying with you for a whole week in your house as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You are not staying with me for a week as a guest or as anything else. You have got to leave by the 4:05 train.
I certainly won't leave you so long as you are in mourning. It would be most unfriendly. If I were in mourning, you wouldn't leave me, I suppose. I should think it very unkind if you did.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you are not too long about it. I never saw anybody take so long to change, with such little result.
Well, it is better than being always overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being always immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous, your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. But you have got to leave by the 4:05 train, and I hope you have a pleasant journey home. This Bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily. And that is everything. But I must see her before I go and make arrangements for another Bunbury. Ah, there she is.
Oh, Amelia came back to bring the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then we have got to part.
I'm afraid so. It is a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from someone to whom one has just been introduced. The absence of old friends will open the door with equanimity, but even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Ferryman. For 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
Cecily, I hope I shall not offend you if I say quite frankly and openly that you appear to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. In fact, if you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary, Cecily? I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
Oh, no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I am quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first dared to look upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I've dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily!
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
Tell it to come here next week at the same hour!
The dog cart is at the door, sir. Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very very annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anybody in the whole world but you. I love you. You will marry me, won't you, Cecily?
You silly boy, of course. Why, we have been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling! And when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last, worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or another. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you. Under this dear old tree here. The next day I bought this little ring in your name, and this is the little bangle with the true lover's knot that I promised you always to wear.
Did I get you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given for you leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I've kept all of your dear letters.
My dear letters. But my own sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
Oh, you need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week, and sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them.
Oh, I couldn't possibly. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote to me after I broke off the engagement were so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But what had I done? I had done nothing at all. Cecily, I am very much hurt indeed to hear you broke off our engagement, particularly when the weather was so charming.
Well, it would have hardly been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, darling. With some help from others.
I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again, Cecily.
I don't think I could break it off now that we have actually met. Besides, of course, there is the matter of your name.
Yes, of course.
Now, you mustn't laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name is Ernest. There's something in that name that inspires one with absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if I had some other name.
But what other name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
Well, my own sweet, loving little darling, I really don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. I do not think it is a bad name at all. In fact, I think it is rather an aristocratic name. Half the chaps who get into the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But really, Cecily, if my name was Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character. But I feel I should be unable to give you my undivided attention.
Your rector here is, I presume, practiced in all the rites and ceremonials of the church?
Oh yes, Dr. Chasuble is a very learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on a most important christening. I mean, on most important business.
Oh?
I shan't be away for more than half an hour.
Considering we have been engaged for the last 3 months, and that we have only just met today for the very first time, it seems rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
Miss Fairfax has called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Ask the young lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. Oh, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, I suppose one of the many elderly women associated with Uncle Jack in some philanthropic work in London. I don't much like women interested in philanthropic work. It is so very forward of them.
Ms. Fairfax.
Pray, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. Oh, what a very sweet name. Something tells me that we are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we have known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray, sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolen, won't you?
If you wish.
Well, then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this would be a favorable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have heard of Papa, I suppose?
I don't think so.
Outside of the family circle, Papa, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown. And I think that is quite as how it should be. The home seems to be the proper sphere for the man, and certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So would you mind if I looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolen. I am very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or any other female relative of advanced years resides here also?
Oh, no, I have no mother. Nor, in fact, any relations.
Indeed.
It is my dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, who has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, that is strange. You never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I cannot say, however, that the news inspires me with the feelings of unmixed delight. I am very fond of you, Cecily. I've liked you ever since I met you. But now I'm bound to state that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward. I can't help expressing a wish you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be, and not so quite very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly,
Pray do so. Whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolen, but did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm afraid they have not been on good terms for a very long time.
Ah, that accounts for it. Now that I think of it, I've never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if a cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing that is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolen, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there must be some slight error. You see, Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post at Saturday at the latest.
You must be on the subject of convention. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
Oh, well, That is very curious, for he proposed to me yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray, do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in the train. I'm so very sorry, dear Cecily, if it is at any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, Gwendolyn, to cause you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I should consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to express one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
Well, I'm very glad to say that I've never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? Oh, I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are quite as common here as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand how anybody manages to exist in the country, if anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering very much from it just at present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, I have been told. May I offer you some tea?
Thank you. Detestable girl. But I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at any of the best houses nowadays.
And that's Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, sweet, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I met you I distrusted you. I felt you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar nature to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest! My own Ernest!
Gwendolyn, darling.
A moment. May I ask you if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily, of course not. Who would have put such a crazy idea in your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may. I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is at present around your waist is my dear guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
John?
Oh, this is Uncle Jack.
Jack?
Here is Ernest.
Cecily, darling!
A moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? To good heavens, Gwendolyn!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn. I mean to Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I believe there must be some slight error in Miss Cardew. The man who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief! Oh! Are you really called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Oh!
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name is certainly John. It has been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on the both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wronged Gwendolyn!
Oh, coming sister, will you not?
There is just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there's just one question we would like to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is of some importance for us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is a very painful thing for a man to be forced to speak the truth. And it is really the first time in my life that I've ever been reduced to such a painful position. And to speak quite frankly, I am quite inexperienced in anything of the sort. However, I have no brother, Ernest. I have no brother at all. I never had a brother, and I certainly don't intend on having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None at all.
Have you not a brother of any kind?
Even of any kind.
Well, I'm very afraid to say, Cecily, that neither of us are engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl suddenly to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly come to venture after us there.
No. Men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call bun-burying, I suppose.
Yes. And what a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is, too. The most wonderful Bunbury I've had in my life.
You've no right to Bunbury here.
Oh, that's absurd. One has a right to Bunbury wherever one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunbury, good heavens!
Well, if one wants to have any amusement in life, one must be serious about something. I happen to be serious about Bunbury. What on earth you are serious about, I haven't the faintest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
The only small bit of satisfaction I gain from the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run out to the country quite so often as you used to, dear Algy. And quite a good thing it is, too.
Your brother's a little off color, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear to London quite so frequently as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing either.
And as for your conduct toward Miss Cardew, I must say that your taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable. To say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
Well, I can see no possible defense at all for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax. To say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to one, and that is all. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There's no chance at all of your marrying Miss Cardew.
Well, I don't think there is much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
Well, that is none of your business.
If it were my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It is very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that. And then, only at dinner parties.
How you can sit there calmly eating muffins while we are in the midst of this wretched affair, I can't quite make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can hardly eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably get on my cuffs. One should always eat muffins quite calmly. It is the only way to eat them.
I think it is perfectly heartless to eating muffins at all under the circumstances.
When I am in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I am in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At the present moment, I am eating because I am unhappy. Besides, I am particularly fond of muffins.
Well, that is no reason to eat them all in that greasy way.
Would you, I wish you'd have tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens! A man made his own muffins in his own garden.
But you have just said it was perfectly harmless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you under the circumstances. That's quite a different thing.
Well, that may be, but the muffins are the same.
I wish to goodness you could go.
This is absurd. You can't ask me to go without having some dinner. I never go without my dinner. No one ever does, except vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I have just made arrangements with Dr. Charles to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Ernest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements myself to be christened with Dr. Charlesville at 5:30, and I will naturally take the name of Ernest. Gwendolyn would wish it. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I should like. There's no proof whatsoever that I have ever been christened, and I should make it extremely probable that I never was. And so does Dr. Charlesville. It is entirely different in your case, however. You have been christened.
Yes, but I've not been christened for years.
Yes, but you have been christened.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. It might make you rather unwell. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very closely connected with you was very nearly carried off this week in Paris by a severe chill.
But you said yourself that the severe chill was not hereditary.
It used to be, I know. But I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
That is nonsense. You're always speaking nonsense.
Jack, you're at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There are only 2 left. I told you I'm particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake.
Why on earth then do you allow tea cake to be served for your guests?
Fuji, why don't you go? I don't want you here. Please, go.
I haven't finished my tea yet. Besides, there is still 1 muffin left.
The fact that they did not follow me into the house, as anyone else would have done, seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't to cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery!
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly. It is the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, please answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
If you can believe him.
Oh, I don't. But that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer to me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you would have an opportunity of coming to visit me in town as often as possible?
You doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have many doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. Their explanations seem to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to have the stamp of truth upon the matter.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief has said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then do you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean no.
True. I had forgotten. There's a privilege that one cannot surrender. But which one of us should tell them? This task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An admirable idea. I almost always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time from me?
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still an inseparable barrier, that is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we're going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, are you prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, are you ready to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes. When matters of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing. Darling!
Darling!
Ahem, Lady Bracknell.
Gwendolen, what does this mean?
Merely that I'm going to be engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young and physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, my daughter's sudden flight from her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin, I followed her at once by luggage train. Her unhappy father is under the impression that she's attending a lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the influence of a permanent income on thought. You will clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately. From this moment, on this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
But I'm engaged to be married to Gwendolen, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the sort, sir. And now, as regards to Algernon. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
may I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend Bunbury resides?
No. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been quite sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, Paul Bunbury died this afternoon.
But what did he die of?
Oh, he was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
What I mean is that he was found out. His doctors found out that he could not live, and so Bunbury died.
He seems to have great confidence in the opinion of his physician. I am glad, however, that he came to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now, Mr. Worthing. Mr. Worthing. May I ask, who is this young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me to be a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon.
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know if there's anything peculiarly exciting in the air in this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seem to me dramatically above the statistics which have been laid down for our guidance. Some preliminary inquiry on my part does not seem out of place. Mr. Worthing. Mr. Worthing. Is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I was not aware at all of any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, SW, Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Spore in Fifeshire, NB.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of your authenticity?
I have preserved the court guides of the period, Lady Bracknell. They are open to your inspection.
I have known grave errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby, a firm of the highest position in their profession. Indeed, I am told one of them, Mr. Markby's, is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
How very kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I have also in my possession, you will be pleased to hear, proof of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism registration, whooping cough vaccination confirmation, and the measles, both the German and the English variety.
A life crowded with incident, I see. Though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I am not myself in favor of premature experiences. Gwendolyn, the time approaches for our departure. We've not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I may as well ask you if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, about £130,000 in the funds, that is all. Oh, goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So nice to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. £130,000. And in the funds. Miss Cardew seems to me a most attractive young lady now that I look at her. Few girls of the present day have any really strong qualities, any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come here, dear. Pretty child, your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems almost as nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a really marvelous effect in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to a young lady Lansing, and after 3 months her own husband did not know her.
No, 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn around, sweet child. No, the side view is what I want. Ah, yes, just as I suspected, there are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The 2 weak points of our generation are its want of principle and its want of profile. Oh, no, the chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on the way the chin is worn. They are worn very high at present. Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the sweetest, dearest girl I ever saw, and I don't care 2 pence for social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only those who cannot get into it do that. My dear, you must know that Algernon has only his debts to depend upon. But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind to my name. But I never dreamed for a moment of allowing that to stand in my way. I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may refer to me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage should take place quite soon, I think.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I'm not in favor of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of learning each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
I beg your pardon for interrupting, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is entirely out of the question. Miss Cardew cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say an ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more could a person possibly want?
It pains me greatly to speak frankly about your nephew in front of you, Lady Bracknell, but the truth of the matter is, I don't much care for his moral character. I find him untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon, impossible. He is an Oxonian.
I fear there can be little possible doubt about the matter. The other afternoon, while I was in London on an important question of romance, he obtained access to my house under the false pretense of being my brother. Under an assumed name he drank, I'd just been informed by my butler, an entire bottle of my Perrier-Jouet Brew 89, one I was specifically reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of the afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. Subsequently, he stayed to tea and devoured every single muffin. And what makes the matter all the more heartless is that he knew quite well from the first that I have no brother, that I never had a brother, and that I certainly don't intend on having any brother in the future, not even of any kind. I told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
If, Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided to entirely overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
That is very generous of you, Lady Bracknell. However, my decision on the matter is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come here, sweet child. How old are you, dear?
Well, I am really only 18, but I always admit to 20 when I go to evening parties.
You are quite right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. They look so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20th evening parties. Well, it will not be long before you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So, your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of no importance.
Forgive me, Lady Bracknell, but according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come legally of age until she is 35.
I do not see that to be a grave objection. 35 is a perfectly attractive age. London society is full of women of the highest birth who have, by their own free choice, remained 35 for years. Lady Dumbleton is case in point. To my knowledge, she has been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40, which was many years ago now. I do not see why our dear Cecily should not be even more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is at present. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algy, could you wait for me until I was 35?
Of course I could. You know I could, Cecily.
Yes, I felt it instinctively. But I could not wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anything. It always makes me rather cross. I am not punctual myself, but I do like punctuality in others, and waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait till she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say seems to display a somewhat impatient nature. I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But, Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolyn, I'll allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must know that what you ask is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us have to look forward to.
That is not the destiny which I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself. Come, dear, we've already missed 5, if not 6 trains. Miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir, is that not somewhat premature?
Both of these gentlemen expressed desire immediate baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly disappointed to learn that this was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand that there to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think as things are now, it would be of much practical value to us, Dr. Chaucer.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savor of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views that I've refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I've just been informed by the pew opener that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I'm on my way to see her.
Pray, allow me to detain you for a moment. Is this Miss Prism a female of a repellent aspect, remotely connected to education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for 3 years Miss Cardew's admirable governess and valued companion.
Despite what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you were waiting for me in the vestry, dear Canyon. I have been waiting for you there for an hour and 3/4.
Prism? Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104 Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator containing a baby of the male sex. You never returned. After the lengthy investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was found at midnight in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained a 3-volume novel of more than revolting sentimentality, but the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day that you mention, a day that's forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag which I had intended to place the manuscript of the work of fiction I had been writing in my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction, for which I can never forgive myself, I placed the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance. I insist on knowing where you placed that handbag that contained that infant.
I left it in one of the cloakrooms of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria, right in line.
I must retire to my room a moment. One someone wait here for me.
If you are not too long, I will wait for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not suspect, Dr. Tolsville. I need not tell you that in families of high positions, coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered a thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
It almost sounds as if you're having an argument. I hate arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
It has stopped now.
I do wish he would reach some conclusion.
This suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag you speak of? Examine it carefully before you answer. The happiness of more than life depends on it.
It seems to be mine. Yes, here is the injury it received in the upsetting the Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. And here's the stain that was caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred in Leamington. And here on the lock are my initials. I'd forgotten that in an extravagant mood I'd had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I'm delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It's been such a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than this handbag. I am the infant that you placed inside of it.
You?
Yes, Mother!
Oh, Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried.
Unmarried. I do not deny that is a serious blow. But should we cast a stone against those who have suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out the act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but could you kindly inform me who I am?
I am afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my unfortunate sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's older brother? I knew I had a brother. I have always said I had a brother. Cecily, how could you have doubted that I had a brother? Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you young scoundrel, you will have to treat me with more respect in the future. You have never treated me like a brother in any of your days.
Well, not till today, old boy, I admit. I did my best, though I was out of practice.
My own. But what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you have become someone else?
Good heavens, I'd quite forgotten that point. Your decision on the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affections. What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Well, the question had better be cleared up at once. Aunt Augusta, a moment. When I was left in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I was christened. That is settled. Now, what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
I cannot at the present moment recall the General's Christian name, though I don't doubt he had one. He was an eccentric man, but only in later years, and that was the result of the Indian climate, and marriage, and indigestion, and other unfortunate things of that nature.
Algy, can you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
My dear boy, we were hardly on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would be in the army list of the period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta.
The General was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. But I do not doubt his name would be in any military directory.
All right, sir.
Merriman, fetch me in the army list of the period. M volume.
Yes, sir.
The army list of the last 40 years I listed here. These delightful records should have been my constant study. M Generals. Malum, Maxwell, Madley, what ghastly names they have. Mark B, Miggs B, Mobs, Moncrief. Lieutenant 1840, Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, General 1869. Christian names. Ernest, John. I've always told you my name was Ernest. It is Ernest. Actually, it is Ernest.
Yes, I do recall that the General was called Earnest. I knew I had a reason for disliking the name.
Ernest, my own Ernest. I felt from the first you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, there's nothing quite so painful as for a man to realize that all his life he's been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, for I now know you are sure to change.
My own one.
Letitia!
Frederick, at last.
Cecily! At last!
At last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I have now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.